Well, thank you everybody for coming. We always like to see such a nice crowd here. I'm just going to introduce our guest today, who I'm sure most of you actually already know. In fact, I know a number of you already know him pretty well. Andrew Weintraub is a professor of music at the University of Pittsburgh. He received his master's and his doctoral degrees in ethnomusicology from the University of Hawaii and the University of California at Berkeley. His book, Dangdut Stories, A Social and Musical History of Indonesia's Most Popular Music, was published in 2010 by Oxford University Press. He's also the editor and co-editor of several books, including Music and Cultural Rights, published by the University of Illinois Press, and his most recent edited work, Islam and Popular Music in Indonesia and Malaysia, with Routledge. He's participated in numerous recordings and other media productions, was a visiting fellow at the Royal Netherlands Institute of Southeast Asian and Caribbean Studies, and has received several different kinds of Fulbright Awards. Among his other activities, he has also participated in a number of international performance tours of Indonesian puppetry and martial arts. Watch out for that guy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Weintraub.
Thank you very much, Christiane. Can everybody hear me? Do I need to use this? Maybe I'll just use it and see what happens. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's great to see so many old friends, and it's great to be in this lovely summer weather that we're having. Pittsburgh is a little bit warmer, but not much, but we're getting ready for the spring. So my talk is based on some research that I've been conducting since about 2003 on Dangdut. And as Christiane mentioned, I do have a book on that topic. But this is going into a little bit different arena, which is the presidential election and the campaign coming up this year. And so I hope that I can get some very good feedback from you, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. The title of the talk is From Street Singer to President, Celebrity Politics and Islam in Indonesia. That first part of the title is actually a text from a song called 1001 Macam, 1001 Ways of Making a Living. And one of the ways is to be a street singer. Another way is to be a president. And that's what Roma Irama is trying to be. In 2012, celebrated musician, film star, and Muslim orator Roma Irama announced his candidacy for president of Indonesia in 2014. With backing from the National Awakening Party, Partai Kebangkitan Bangsa, or PKB, and support from Indonesia's largest Muslim organization, Nahdlatul Ulama, NU, Roma Irama's bid for Indonesia's presidency helps us to understand the increasingly important relationship between celebrity, politics, and Islam in Indonesia. Without any legislative experience or a well-defined platform, Roma Irama as presidential candidate, Calon Presiden or Capres, has captured the attention of political parties, especially Islamic parties, the media, and Indonesian citizens from all walks of life. Beloved by some and loathed by others, but always at the center of controversy, Roma Irama is playing a starring role in the 2014 presidential campaign season. A close look at one celebrity politician and his campaign provides a detailed perspective on how candidates are performers in this election. Roma Irama has been a dominant force in Indonesian music and popular culture since the early 1970s. He is synonymous with Dangdut, a genre of Indonesian popular music that blends Malay, Middle Eastern, Indian, and American elements into a distinctly Indonesian form of expression. Using print media, music, and film, Roma paved the way for Dangdut to become popular on a national scale in the mid-1970s. As a pioneer and modernizer of Dangdut, and by far its largest and biggest star, Roma Irama is the self-proclaimed King of Dangdut, Raja Dangdut. And how many of you know Roma Irama's music? Okay, maybe I'll just play a little bit just to get it in your ear. Kalau belum bisa aku mendapatkan Oh. In this talk, I will draw from two areas of inquiry in political science to analyze Romeo Rama's campaign to date. One, performance of politics, and two, celebrity politics. First, in the performance of politics, candidates and production teams inject symbolic representations, such as images, symbols, and stories of candidates, into a campaign. Subsequently, journalists mediate these symbolic representations in various ways, and voters vote based on these symbolic representations. A political campaign relies on images, symbols, storytelling, affect, and emotion. Coverage of the election is like an entertainment art form, as Neil Postman wrote in Amusing Ourselves to Death. Election politics have become a culture industry of polling, popularity, tabloids, intrigue, entertainment, scandal, advertisements. This is not to say that issues are not important, but issues alone do not win elections. They have to be represented. Therefore, a political campaign is a social text that can be read and interpreted for meaning. If politics is performance, then we have to ask, who are the performers, what gets performed, and what do these performances mean in specific contexts? Second, celebrity politics, as I use it here, refers to celebrities who use their fame, reputation, and public visibility to gain elected office. They have name recognition, and their fame attracts the interests of voters. As political sociologist David Marsh writes, quote, "To win office, celebrity politicians tend to capitalize on their position as popular public figures, combining it with self-conscious posturing as political outsiders, or not tainted with the awkward compromises, linguistic obfuscation, and endemic opportunities that they claim professional politics imposes upon its practitioners. They are known, they are liked, and quite often they are rich. All attributes any ordinary newcomer to political campaigning craves. They are new, they are exciting, they are unpredictable. All attributes an incumbent politician they may run against has often long since lost," end quote. Of course, as many cases have shown, good actors do not necessarily make good politicians, or bad actors for that matter. But celebrities are adept at image making, a key feature of modern politics. They are used to media coverage, fans, gossip columnists, and intrusions into their public lives. They are well suited to many of the demands placed on politicians. Several social factors account for the rise of celebrity politics. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back for a second. Celebrity politics is relatively new to the political scene in Indonesia. Jenny Lindsay notes that celebrity involvement expanded in 2004, whether as support teams, party endorsements, or candidates themselves. Ariel Haryanto states that in the 2009 election, television and film actors, musicians, and comedians ran for parliamentary seats at the national level, and 18 were successful. Journalist and critic Julia Suryakusuma reported recently that 47 celebrities are on the books to contest seats in the legislature in 2014. Several social factors account for this rise in celebrity politics in Indonesia during the last 15 years, and I'll summarize those in 2 points. First of all, the changes in the election process. Prior to a 2002 amendment to the Constitution, the president and vice president were elected by the House of Representatives, the DPR. The first direct presidential election was held in 2004. For the first time, voters could choose an individual candidate. The focus away from parties and toward individuals favored candidates who had face recognition. For example, ballots included photos of the candidates for the first time. And this year, websites have been set up to prepare voters with photos and downloadable bios of the candidates in all of the national and regional elections. Secondly, changes in media have contributed to this rise in celebrity politics. After the fall of Suharto in 1998, with media deregulation, the number of TV stations and popular print media increased dramatically. Equally noteworthy is the rise in privatization of media, which means that television time is increasingly more available and less expensive. Van Zunen writes that, quote, popularization and personalization, key features of celebrity politics, seem to be more important as entertainment, the internet, mobile telephony, and other mediations take center stage. That's a hard word to say, end quote. The rise in these media forms correlates with a rise in celebrity politics because those media are populated by celebrities. Observers of Indonesian politics have framed politics as performance, and they have noted that celebrity politicians are on the rise. And we can think of John Pemberton's work on the 1982 election. We can think of Jenny Lindsay's work in 2005, 2007, and also Ariel Hrianto's recent article in 2010. But these and other commentators seem to treat all celebrities as one indistinguishable category. They do not differentiate them in terms of what they represent and how they function in elections. Classifying them as celebrities carries the implication that they are unqualified and unprepared. Indeed, many of them are. Nevertheless, celebrities as signs carry different meanings in elections, depending on who they are, as well as a variety of other social and material factors. What people think of Roma Irama is not what they think of Julia Perez, a legislative candidate this year, actually. So what does the celebrification of politics mean for Indonesia? Roma Irama is the first celebrity politician that I know of to run for president of Indonesia, which is a compelling reason to look at this case. But there is a third element that begs for comment, and that is his role as a popular preacher-entertainer, mubalik. Since the 1980s, he has been performing sermons for large audiences of Muslims in small towns across the archipelago. He uses these events to communicate religious messages about Islam, or da'wah. Roma Irama represents the blending of religion and politics in this election, which is a major topic that I'm going to discuss in the paper. So in this paper, I'll describe Roma Irama and how he is using his fame, reputation, and public visibility to gain elected office. I will analyze his campaign as a performance, a narrativized set of images, symbols, and stories about political communication in Indonesia today. The stage is the election itself, and he is the star actor. I will approach the performance of politics in terms of an actor's idiolect, the particular repertoire of voice, expressions, gestures, and styles associated with a person's persona. I will illustrate with examples of his idiolect from performances of music and da'wah, and I will discuss what these mean in the context of this year's presidential campaign. According to Roma Irama himself, the PKB leadership urged him to run in 2012. The PKB, founded in 1998, is based on Pancasila state ideology and the separation of religion and state. It's not a proponent of Sharia law in Indonesia, although it is Muslim-based. Roma was hesitant at first, but then decided to pursue it, quote, for the good of the country, end quote. This would be the first of many performances as hero and martyr in the campaign, a role that he had been used to playing in over 20 films. And here you see one of his posters that he made, which is him on a horse, which is how he appeared in a 1984 film. And it makes the PKB part of this, the name of the film, which was Satria Bergitar, a knight who carrying a guitar, or a guitar-playing knight, with the word partai, or partai, party of the guitar-carrying knights. And towards Indonesia becoming a moralistic and dignified country. Asked if he was prepared for the presidency, he stated that moving into politics was natural because he knew his constituents over the last 40 years of performing throughout the archipelago. He said, quote, I have been getting to know the people, using the Javanese word blusukan, which was a word that was circulating around when Jokowi used the word himself. Jokowi has just been announced as the candidate for the PDIP party and has a very strong chance of winning if we look at his polling numbers. I've been getting to know the people since I formed the Soneta Band, which is his band that he formed in 1970, by giving religious speeches and performing music. So in politics, it was not necessary for me to transform from a singer into a politician, end quote. Roma's quote indicates that he's been honing his leadership abilities during the last 40 years. He has been involved in national politics since the mid-1970s, in fact. From 1977 to 1982, he campaigned for the United Development Party, the Partai Persatuan Pembangunan, or PPP, a coalition party of Islamic religious groups. By the mid-80s, as Islam began to liberalize and state restrictions against Islam loosened, President Suharto's Golkar regime began endorsing Dangdut and building alliances with performances to generate popular support. Switching allegiance at that point, Roma joined Golkar in 1988. That same year, he returned to television after an 11-year ban for protesting some of the policies of the Suharto regime, which he didn't do after that. In the 1990s, a period when Islam was publicly embraced by Suharto, Roma Irama moved closer to the New Order government that had previously rejected him. When asked about his campaign platform, however, he told reporters to listen to the messages in his songs. His music communicates messages and instructs the masses about political issues. His songs have introduced populist messages about such things as human rights, social class inequality, social struggle through religion, and government corruption, among others. His songs about male-female relationships, moral behavior, and socio-political issues speak directly to the everyday lives of ordinary Indonesians. So what is his vision of political leadership? Roma's position is that he is ready to be president because he can speak for people. Using the colors of the Indonesian flag, he emphasized the power of his music in the following quote. "My principle is that music has to be able to shape the people. If we want them red, they'll turn red. If we want them white, they'll turn white. Drunks will stop drinking, rude people will become pleasant, non-believers will become believers, all from music," end quote. So how are music and religion actually integrated into the campaign? The following two videos will show different elements of his performance style, sound, and appearance, and explain how these function as symbols in his bid for the presidency. The performance from February 20th, 2013 takes place at a PKB campaign rally in Pasuruan, East Java, for the election of an administrative head and his vice Bupati of the Regency. Bupati is the administrative head, who actually won. A gigantic banner showing the candidates' faces stretches the entire length of the stage behind the musicians and invited guests. Roma and his band Soneta are dressed in their typical white outfits, although Roma stands apart with a cape and sash. In the opening statement, he urges the crowd, quote, "Under the leadership of these candidates, let's work to improve our solidarity and national unity. Let's not differentiate ourselves based on language, ethnicity, and especially religion. We are all Indonesians, and we number over 200,000 people," which is the title of the song, end quote. The march-like music, machine gun-sounding guitars, and the unison choreographed steps and movements among the musicians emphasize the militaristic mood of the song. A fanfare signals the significance of the song lyrics that are about to come. In concert with the lyrical theme of unity and collectivity, he points to people in the crowd as if they are from different ethnic groups: Sundanese, Javanese, Achenese, Padang, Batak, and later Betawi, Makassaris, Ambonese, Bugis, and Dayak. As in many of his songs, he instructs the audience not to do something. In this case, don't offend each other because we are all Indonesian citizens. The song includes an interactive dialogue with the people about where they are from and theatricalizes the notion that politics are participatory. He makes a joke about the former colony East Timor, which divorced Talak Tiga from Indonesia and became independent Timor-Leste in 2002. On stage, he is the leader, standing in front and center of a coordinated harmonic ensemble of citizens symbolized by the Soneta Band.
Selanjutnya, di bawah kepemimpinan Irsyad Gagah di Pasuruan, mari kita tingkatkan soliditas persatuan dan kesatuan tanpa membedakan bahasa, suku, bangsa, bahkan agama sebagai representasi dari rakyat Indonesia yang jumlahnya lebih dari 200 juta. Lebih dari 200 juta jiwa penduduk Indonesia, terdiri dari banyak suku bangsa, itulah Indonesia. Ada Sunda, ada Jawa, Aceh, Padang, Batak, dan banyak lagi yang lainnya. Lebih dari 200 juta jiwa penduduk Indonesia, terdiri dari banyak suku bangsa, itulah Indonesia. Janganlah saling menghina satu suku bangsa dengan lainnya, karena kita satu bangsa dan satu bahasa Indonesia. Bineka Tunggal Ika lambang negara kita Indonesia. Walaupun bermacam-macam aliran, tetapi satu tujuan. Lebih dari 200 juta jiwa penduduk Indonesia, terdiri dari banyak suku bangsa, itulah Indonesia. Betawinya, Makassarnya, Ambon, Bugis, Dayak. Ana sing ngerong disebut toh? Mana? Madura, nggih. Mana lagi? Pasuruan ya Jawa mau. Mana lagi? Timur-timur. Udah cerai kemarin talak 3. Mana Papua? Iya. Dan banyak lagi yang lainnya. Lebih dari 200 juta jiwa penduduk Indonesia, terdiri dari banyak suku bangsa, itulah Indonesia. Coblos nomor, coblos nomor.
The second example on the video demonstrates Roma's performance as a preacher-entertainer, mubalik or juru da'wah. From the Arabic root da'a, to call, da'wah refers to preaching or proselytizing Islam. In the 1980s, in addition to creating da'wah music, Roma Irama established a second career as a preacher-entertainer. During this period, the line between his music and his sermons was often negligible. In this scene, he has been invited to give a religious speech for the opening of a mosque in Pekalongan, Central Java. The crowd fills the field. Roma interacts with the audience and shapes his speech around their desires and aspirations. He cajoles, persuades, teases, and teaches. He delivers his sermon through exhortations, instructions, and commands. He is a talented orator who knows how to hold an audience's attention. In order to keep their attention, He uses a variety of vocal registers and languages: Indonesian, a smattering of Javanese, Arabic, and English. He anchors his sermons with Arabic quotes from the Quran and entertains the audience with snippets from his songs. The speech lasts about an hour. Romo's speeches typically blend Islamic messages with music and elements of his biography. In this scene, he preaches about leadership. Only God can lead. His speech glorifies Muhammad, and he cites the 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, the 1978 book by Michael Hart, in which Muhammad is listed first. This leads to a tangent about kings in music. There are three. Elvis was the king of rock. Michael Jackson was the king of pop. And here's the video. And I've chosen this because he does use a lot of English in here, which is pretty interesting.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Nah, yang kedua, kebesaran Nabi Muhammad pun itu ditunjukkan oleh seorang yang non-Muslim. Beliau membuat sebuah buku namanya, judulnya The 100. Tahu artinya 100? 100, bukan 50. 100. Kenapa buku itu diberi nama 100? Karena di dalam buku itu ada 100 tokoh dunia. Di samping 4 orang nabi, ya, di sana ada 100 tokoh dunia. Penulis buku ini namanya Michael H. Hart. Siapa? Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson itu siapa? Hah? Penyanyi apa? Nyanyi rock, so tahu lo. Orang dalam lo. Michael Jackson itu bukan penyanyi rock, tapi penyanyi pop. Ya, makanya beliau dapat gelar The King of Pop, Raja Pop. Ya, di dunia ini ada 3 raja. Pertama, The King of Rock and Roll, Raja Rock and Roll. Siapa? Elvis Presley. Yang kedua, The King of Pop, Raja Pop. Siapa? Michael Jackson. Yang ketiga, Raja yang dua udah meninggal, yang satu sebentar lagi.
I tell you can't lose with material like this. Okay. All right. Yeah, he thought his life was going to last about as long as Muhammad's, but he surpassed that. He's now older than that. Okay. After announcing his candidacy, television, blogs, Facebook, Twitter, and other media reported the news. Critics suggested that it was a joke. Fellow presidential hopeful Weintraub asked incredulously, "A dangdut singer running for president? Pretty soon we'll have an acrobat running too." Social media generated both fawning support and vehement opposition. Diehard fans generated Facebook groups such as Forza, fans of Roma Irama Soneta, Romania, Soneta Mania, and the oddly named group Sperma, which means sperm, Serikat Pendukung Roma Irama, or the United Supporters of Roma Irama. A storm of insults began appearing on the social media scape. An anti-Roma Irama Facebook page started with this quote: "Join this Facebook page if you do not support a hypocritical presidential candidate who would tear apart the country. Sex maniac, racist, offensive, a hypocrite who only wants to be praised by others." End quote. How was it that Roma's presidential aspirations were causing such consternation? People are familiar with his biography, his extramarital affairs, his outspoken support of polygamy, his stern criticism of female singer Inul Daratista, whose eroticized dance movements threatened his own popularity in 2003, his role in drafting the anti-pornography bill in 2008, and his more recent censure of the Miss World contest in Bali, which he argued ran counter to the principles of Islam. The run-up towards the current campaign, which we're still in, brought Roma into the spotlight once again. In a speech given at a mosque in Jakarta in August 2012, in between campaigning for incumbent governor of Jakarta, Fauzi Bowo, Roma advised the assembled crowd that they should pick a leader of their own religion, Islam. This was an affront to Basuki Cahaya Purnama, also known as Ahok, the vice gubernatorial candidate who is Christian and Chinese Indonesian. So much for respecting a person's religion and race. Based on these incendiary and discriminatory remarks, he was summoned to explain his statements in front of the Election Supervisory Committee. However, the committee did not pursue the case further. Not satisfied with the findings of the committee, the producers of the Indonesian Lawyers Club, a television program, invited representatives of the committee to answer questions on the air about why Roma had not been charged for offending someone else's faith during an election. Trial lawyer and host Karni Ilyas, along with a group of lawyers, activists, and journalists, invited Roma Irama to comment. The program, entitled Roma Reinvigorates Sara, Roma Menggoyang Sara, raised the issue of Sara, an acronym for ethnic, religious, racial, and intergroup relations. In this case, Roma had invoked ethnicity, religion, race, and intergroup relations to determine the measure of a candidate, which is forbidden in political campaigns. As Roma Irama explains in this short video, he was simply being a good Muslim, and he had the verse from the Quran to back him up. Citing a passage from the Quran, An-Nisa 144, Roma reports that Islam forbids Muslims to vote for a leader who is not Muslim. Karni Ilyas interrupts Roma before he can recite the verse and asks him if that is the correct verse. Karni asks, "Are you sure it's not from the Surah Al-Ma'idah, number 151? The joke comes from the fact that in the Surah Al-Ma'idah there are only 120 verses, so the verse 151 does not exist. But it's even funnier because of the way Karni takes Roma to task for using Quranic verses rather than legal grounds for argumentation in a court of law. He draws attention to the fact that Roma Irama does not understand the laws of the state and would therefore presumably not make a good president. In the video, we can see how the meeting is a test, an audition, in front of a large televised audience. His failure at the audition is handled in a humorous way, but it makes a powerful statement about his legitimacy in the campaign.
Dakwah. Jadi substansi yang saya sampaikan adalah firman Allah Subhanahu wa taala An-Nisa 144.
An-Nisa 144 atau Al-Maidah 151?
An-Nisa 144. Ya. Yang bunyinya ya ayyuhalladzina amanu la tattabi'u.
And my last example is a cartoon. This cartoon shows Roma dressed in suit and tie, playing a guitar and standing in front of the Indonesian flag. He announces, "To become a presidential candidate, you don't need to become a politician." The cartoon challenges Roma's view that a presidential candidate, much less a president, does not need to understand how politics work. The Indonesian flag is simply propped up, rather precariously on a small stand and partially hidden in the background. He seems to be more focused on playing his guitar than in matters of statecraft. He looks rather unpresidential, with his unkempt hair and unshaven face. The underlying message of the cartoon is, how will he actually appear as president? He will have to represent everyone, including other politicians. He'll have to work with them to get things done, including elevating him to the rank of president. The cartoon suggests that he's playing the role of presidential candidate with understanding what it will actually take to be president. So what is going on here? Being denigrated as a viable candidate not only called attention to Roma in the sense that any publicity is good publicity, but it also increased his popularity among those who view him as a victim of elites and intellectuals. This is a common dangdut story. Despised as the music of the have-nots in the 1970s, dangdut in the hands of Roma Irama surges forward to become Indonesia's most popular music in the 90s, a genre that Secretary of State Murdiono in the New Order would call very Indonesian. This is also a typical story in political campaigns where the political outsider gains from being pushed even further outside. Others suggested that Roma's campaign was a way for the PKB to get some well-needed attention. Political analyst and researcher Siti Zuro suggested that the PKB was using him as a vote-getter to mobilize voters. This was simply politics as usual, or parties using dangdut stars to draw voters. Indeed, the fortunes of PKB had been falling since the 1999 election. PKB won 13% of the vote in 1999, 11% in 2004, and only 5% in 2009. Other Islamic parties experienced similar declines. As Meitzner notes, the overall share of the vote for Islamic parties dropped from 38.1% in 2004 to 27.8% in 2009, indicating the strengthening of political centrism. During the same time, Indonesia experienced a dramatic increase in the popular culture of Islam: films, television, novels, fashion, and music. As a popular preacher, entertainer, and celebrity politician for one of the main Islamic parties, Roma Irama occupies the center of these struggles over the role and future direction of Islamic parties in national politics. What does it mean for Roma Irama to be running for president? In order for a candidate to become president, she or he must be, first of all, popular, popularitas, and secondly, electable, electabilitas. Popularitas is not only an index of whether the candidate is known by the voter, but also an important factor in getting elected. A candidate cannot win on popularity alone. She or he needs to be electable. Roma is clearly the most popular candidate, albeit the least electable. In a recent poll, Roma's electabilitas was only 0.5%, whereas his popularitas was 99.5%. If this is simply a case of being popular and not electable, some would argue that the campaign up to this point has been a comic interlude or a big waste of time. I do not think this is the case. Mass media do not function simply as means of communication or instruments of politics, but instead constitute the very relations of politics. This election has been about celebrity politics and Islam because that is how elections are run these days in Indonesia. My analysis is interpretive and symbolic. It is a reading of Roma Irama as a text that highlights meanings about the performance of politics. His performance in this election is an opportunity for Indonesia to dramatize various ideological positions around issues like authoritarianism, ethnic relations and discrimination, the separation of religion and state, and the nature of Islamic leadership. For Indonesians, the campaign season is a testing of the waters, or a rehearsal for democracy, and Roma is a major actor in the play. Thank you. They're using each other, I think. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, he's one of three candidates that's being trotted out, to try to get the nomination. Mahfud Md and Yusuf Kala are the other two, and it's not even clear that Roma would be the PKB candidate. These posters that you see are all things that he's made himself. Had just just in case, just so to be prepared ahead of time. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on there. I think they're both using each other. Yeah.
I didn't hear your remark on wealth. I'm not sure how parties fund campaigns or what level of expense.
Yeah.
But it would strike me he's fairly wealthy.
Yeah.
Is he spending his own money? And how do campaigns get funded?
Yeah, I've asked him that, and he wouldn't tell me. So, I mean, it's not surprising. I've seen that something about how the head of the party said that this is a relatively inexpensive campaign because he's got Romeo Rama on the ticket. So that indicates that there's some funds coming in from him, but that's in a newspaper report, which you can't believe. So, yeah.
Are they within Indonesian politics, to the degree you know? Are there donors? How is democracy set forth intellectual, politics there? People pumping money at?
I'm sure there are. Yeah. I don't know the details of that, but I'm sure there are a lot of powerful people who can support a candidate in one way or another, despite any kind of rules that to the contrary. So, yeah. Yeah.
Has he been accused of, or have people tried to portray him, his not supporters, as sexist and therefore not a good choice for?
They've mentioned the fact that he's polygamous. He has 4 wives, and it's out there in the open. And the last I heard, you couldn't be a public servant and be polygamous. So, unless they change the law on that. But the women's groups have not really started coming out yet. I don't think they're really taking him seriously as a candidate. So it's a little bit early, but I'm sure that's what we'll see soon. That's going to come up because of the whole history of his sexist remarks and the whole Inul controversy and yeah, many other things. So I'm sure we're going to start seeing those. Yeah. Some of the remarks came out on the anti-Roma Irama Facebook page about his transgressions and support of very fundamentalist groups that are not kind to women. Yeah, yeah.
Because
How what?
how seriously should we take this candidacy? Because PKB is very unlikely to raise their votes above 5%.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I don't think he can run
Yeah.
officially in the presidential.
Well, he could be. I mean, they're going to probably form a coalition with other Muslim groups, and then he, theoretically, he could be advanced as the candidate of that coalition, which is highly unlikely, I would think, because there's so many candidates and there's so many parties that would be part of that coalition in order to get the 20% seats that they need in order to mount a nomination. So it's pretty unlikely that once they get to that point that he would be the candidate.
Do you think that PKB is actually just using him to run the legislative campaigns and not?
That's also part of it, yeah, because he comes out and he performs on stage like the one that we saw for these local campaigns, and he's probably going to keep doing that even if he's not advanced as the candidate. So it's a good alliance there for them if they can keep it going. So yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen. Don't worry. I mean, anything can happen in Indonesia. Just,
You may have said, but I missed it. Did he run for anything before he ran for president, or did he just?
No, he's been active in politics, supporting other candidates. He's never run for anything, but he's often out there doing these rallies and appearing on television when the campaign season comes along. And so he's, again, he's being used and uses that opportunity for his own career. Yes. Maybe I had that on there the wrong way. I don't.
No, the writing was correct.
This one has the guitar in the background, by the way.
It was the first, he's holding up. Keep going. There.
Oh, this is. Yeah.
Okay, and then my other question really is I mean, I'm not familiar with the context, but it seems that his candidacy is hard to take seriously from a political standpoint. I'm wondering what effect that has on Dangdut as a musical form. If there's a reciprocal sort of mockery.
Well, there's going to be the mockery, it seems, no matter what. Even though Dangdut is taken more seriously in the sense that it's more available through the mass media on television, and you see it more in mainstream media than you used to. But I mean, people love to mock Dangdut. Mostly people who aren't familiar with the music or are not connected to it somehow. Mostly people who like other kinds of music, like jazz or pop. And so this mockery of Dangdut, I don't see it ever really going away, even though we keep hearing about how middle-class housewives love to listen to Dangdut at home, and because it's on television a lot. But so I don't really think this is going to hurt Dangdut. If anything, it will make it even better, even juicier, even more pungent than it already is. Somehow, yeah.
The Elvis stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it signals a shift over a significant period of time. But 1957,
Yeah.
Elvis Presley on Sukarno, this becomes a marker of what is precisely not Indonesian. And across 30-something years of order now, it can be Indonesian. And I'm sort of wondering, along with Michael Jackson, so I'm wondering if you have some reflections or thoughts about the Indonesian identity that's linked into this.
Yeah.
He also has dancing women behind him,
Yeah.
semi-modestly.
Yeah.
Semi-modestly sort of dressed. So certain things that just wouldn't necessarily seem to be able to go into Islamic.
Yeah, I mean, all of those things you mentioned seem very Indonesian to me. Elvis was a big hero of Roma Irama. In fact, he often brags about how he was one of the top vote getters in a Tom Jones imitation contest, because he modeled his singing after Tom Jones and Elvis. In fact, those are the two stars that he really saw himself patterning his vocal style against in the when he was coming of age in the 60s, actually, mid 60s. So those seem to me, I mean, Dangdut itself is a highly blended hybrid form of a lot of different kinds of music. He plays guitar like Ritchie Blackmore from Deep Purple. It's his big hero as far as guitar playing. So it's another example of that. And then as far as the women, I mean, there's no conflict here. When he was in Pittsburgh, you remember, with his group a couple of years ago, he said that, and this is when the controversy around Inul, this very eroticized dancer, was going on. He said, I have these dancers on stage who are doing these movements, but these movements are completely acceptable within Islam. And he demonstrated it in front of the whole crowd himself. What constitutes an acceptable movement for women? And he taught them how to do those, as opposed, and it's like, we couldn't tell the difference. I mean, but there was like some little fine line there that he had in his mind. So it's in his mind, there's no conflict there. And you see this quite often. Islam is also in Indonesia. It's very flexible. Historically, it's known as extremely moderate and flexible. Although it is its own form of Islam that you shouldn't just say is somehow less because of that.
For me, in some ways, I think it's a real marker of the maturity of Indonesian culture over those 40 years, or a maturing of it, as we're making fun of maybe it not being there, but it's less broad about external than
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but and I would say, we're laughing, but this is part of this whole debate. I think it's something that's going on, and all of these contested images and symbols are out there for us to pay some attention to. And Dangdut is often, we're talking about its image. I mean, it's often overlooked in the sense that it has a lot of these images and symbols that we can really learn from. And that's what I was trying to do with this paper. Yeah, Milu.
Have you been able to ask him about the transition that he made from being a singer, a former musician, and then sort of starting to do his dakwah
Yeah.
thing? Yeah, what I mean, I can guess what he might have been thinking back then,
Yeah.
but do you know, have you had
I think it was a very early transition in his career. I mean, usually somebody's performing career will dry up. They won't be able to get any more gigs, and then they'll turn to becoming a Muslim orator. That happens a lot in performing arts. You see it very frequently. I mean, you can do various occupations after your career has ended. You can become a thief. You can become a Muslim orator. I think there's a whole list of them. But he took the Hajj in 1975, and at that point he really started integrating Islam into his music. And then I think it was also just the talent that he had, the skill that he had in front of an audience that he had been cultivating as a musician, and the availability of these kinds of opportunities that he saw. He was very, very devout, very interested in learning about the Quran, and very interested in cultivating that circle of people, of Kiai and Ustad, and working up something of his own that he could share with people. So I think there was a genuine faith kind of effort to spread the word for him. And it's also a pretty good living. I mean, when there's no gigs, you can always, perform somewhere for one of these events. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to discuss the representation of Islam.
Yeah.
I would argue that there's really a heterogeneity of Islam form. But the question that we seem to be getting is that there's a homogeneity here in the way, in fact, even you are presenting him.
In what sense?
Through his music form and the way you talk about Islam. So I'd like to understand your interpretation of Islam and what his music is doing in Muslims as a whole. I think it will cause more divisions rather than unify them.
You think this representation will cause more divisions among Muslims?
Looking at previous elections, yes, there's been a lot of division amongst different forms.
Yeah.
How this now comes to the fore, say, about Islam and another form of Islam being presented.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, there is a heterogeneity of views about being a Muslim in Indonesia. I didn't want to give you that sense that it was homogeneous, but he has his own very strong view of what he thinks it should be, and so it's based on the basic tenets of Islam and upholding them, but also certain views about women being in their place, and various other things that that he said, and I can, as I talk about this, I can think about that. But I don't think that his intention, anyway, is to be divisive. But I would have to think about that, whether it really does have that effect, because we have, there, especially when you get into politics and the political parties, they do take various positions on things, and so he's obviously going to be feeding into that. So I would have to think about that a little bit more before I answer that question. Yeah.
Given the fact on his strengths and weaknesses and how much some people view him as a joke, so how much do you think he's aware of that? And also, what do you think on why is he running as a candidate? I mean, is he just trying to get more power and publicity, or is there something else behind that?
He's been around the block a few times. He doesn't really care that people criticize him. I mean, he's been criticized his whole career, so that's not really an issue. The answer that he gives is, not everybody's going to like you. There's going to be people who are for you, and there's people against you. So he's not really concerned about that. And I think he does genuinely think that some of these issues that he's raising should be brought out into the political sphere. He has a huge ego, obviously, and so this is supporting his, idea of himself as a royal figure within Indonesian popular culture, or the king of Dangdut. And he is getting some support. So the party is supporting him. So, partly he thinks that, it's a very real, authentic vote of support for his candidacy. And he obviously wants to cultivate his own career, and this is one way to do it. I mean, politics sells. So you can go into the political arena and you can get on television very easily, and you can be a public figure during a campaign season. So there's a lot of things that actually support his career. Again, he's using that for other purposes besides just simply getting himself out there as a political candidate.
So you think he actually believes he has a real chance of winning the election?
Probably not. I think probably not. He's, as we were saying earlier, he's one of three possibilities for the PKB nomination, and then the PKB is probably not going to get more than 5% of the vote, and then they're going to have to form a coalition and decide on one person eventually to put up for as a candidate, and it probably won't be him. So he probably doesn't think that, but you got to try. I think that's what his attitude is. Yeah.
What relationship do you think Roma has with Jokowi?
Oh.
Talk some shit about him in the past.
Yeah. So Jokowi is, we talked about earlier, is the PDIP, I just learned, candidate, is the governor of Jakarta, who's going to be the candidate, the nomination for one of the parties. And it's a very strong candidate in this election. The relationship, I mean, I have a whole thing about this because, Roma is like a celebrity politician. Jokowi is a political celebrity. He hasn't even, even before he announced he was running, he was already the top name in the polling. So people know him and, like him and want him to run. And interestingly, when this whole controversy came out with Ahok, they were very much at odds, obviously. But then they came together, and Jokowi used Roma Irama, and at the New Year's Eve fair in 2000, turn of the year, a couple months ago, Jokowi and Roma Irama got on stage together and sang Darah Muda, Young Blood, together. And so it's symbolizing this coming together. They're using each other because Jokowi knows that Romai Rama also has a huge fan base of voters, young voters, interestingly, and so he wanted to connect with them. And Romai Rama realized that what he had said was very incendiary and very damaging, potentially, to his campaign. So they're together now, politically. I don't think they like each other very much, but they're somehow connected politically. And I think that's probably going to continue. Yeah.
Great. If there are no more questions, I'd like to thank all of you again for coming, and could we thank Dr.